The Hollyland Lark 150 has been my wireless microphone system of choice ever since I reviewed it some 16, 17 months ago. So when Hollyland said that they had a new, updated, improved version, the Lark M1, and asked me if I was interested in review it, I said, of course. After having spent time, about a month at this point, using the new Lark M1, I say with confidence that it has become probably my new wireless microphone recording system of choice. And maybe it should be yours as well. If you're looking for a truly easy plug-and-play solution to allow you to get wireless audio from a discrete lapel mic to your camera or your phone for that matter, then maybe you should consider the Lark M1 as well. Join Craig and I as we talk about it. We break down the highs, the lows, strengths and weaknesses as a part of this new wireless mic system. So considering that the new Lark M1, one of the ways you can utilize it is in what they call duo mode, or an interview type format, where there are two transmitters. Both Craig and I are mic'd up to one of the transmitters, one receiver that's mounted on the camera right now. And so instead of just doing a typical review format, we're going to have a conversation about things that we like, things that we've tested, things that we dislike about the new M1 setup, and you can just listen in on the conversation. So the first thing I do want to say in regards to that is when it comes to the price for the duo setup. Now, I look back at the Lark 150 that we've both been using now for about a year, and it's what I've been using basically exclusively for my channel during the time, and I think same for you. And so for the kind of duo setup that I've got here, it's about $250. And so the new M1 setup is only $149, or you can get the solo version if you're never going to do interview format. You just need one transmitter. You can get that for only $90 US. So the first thing that I always like to evaluate things based on the price point, because I think that's a real consideration. And so I will say that starting off that I'm really impressed by the price point, that it's that downward trend for something that really does have some real improvements, as we'll talk about here as a part of that, I think is impressive there. So one of the first things to talk about, since we've both been using the 150 in more of a lab type style, is the new system. It goes to, as you might be able to see, mine, Craig's is really going to blend into his collar because of a darker shirt. You can probably see here that there's just the little bit of the clip showing. So they've miniaturized everything. But the one thing that you don't have as an option here that you did have before, in that the 150, you could use the transmitter just as a microphone itself. Now, in my case, these are chunkier, and so as a byproduct, they don't hide as well. So it's bigger all the way around. But you could plug in a lav mic and use it in that setup, which is the way I've typically utilized. So, a potential downside here is that you no longer have the lav mic setup. So what's been your findings in regards to eliminate that as an option?
That it doesn't have the lav setup now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think there's just maybe a couple of things. One thing that I think of is that potentially you're going to lose some of kind of that vocal range capture, just because whenever you have that lav mic, it can rest against the actual body of the person and just pick up even more frequency range. And then I think the other thing that I thought of is if you are looking to really do like a professional style shoot, then this clip could be a little too much to hide. It might be just a little too big of a body. Now, in a more casual kind of setting, that's all right. But if you're in suits and tie and everything, that might get a little bit trickier. Maybe inside the pocket might work. Yeah,
and I've actually even seen some people will, in utilizing a system like this, they'll actually use almost like a double-sided tape or something like that to go to the underside of a lapel. So there are workarounds, but I would agree that I would say that is probably the greatest limitation of just not having that as an option. But I actually thought that would be a bigger deal to me going into it. When I was looking at just kind of the breakdown and the design of the information that Hollyland sent to me before it actually arrived, I thought, I don't think I'm going to like that as well, because there isn't an option there to actually plug in the lav mic. Yeah. But because they've miniaturized this even further and they've made it slimmer and smaller in general, it actually works better than what I expected it to. It's less obtrusive than what I thought, and you're right about that sound quality, but I've been able to find that when I always create a custom EQ for all the different mics that I use for post, and I found that basically my videos sound the exact same as what they did before. It may be a very minor tweak that I've done in the tone curve to adjust for that, but it seems like the quality of the microphone is good enough that I haven't missed having the lav option nearly as much as what I thought it was.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think that there's some pros and cons. It's a different approach, but I think that at the end of the day, they're really taking steps in the right direction with that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, kind of speaking about that miniaturized form, it's not just the transmitters that are miniaturized, but the receiver is now really, really sleek. And that's something that's pretty hugely different in terms of the size. I mean, this is the footprint, which is not big, but when you look at the new one, I mean, it is so small that, for one thing, this new one is going to actually fit on some of the smaller bodies like an A6600 like you're using.
Yes.
You can put it in there next to the viewfinder, whereas this, there's not really room to properly mount it on the hot shoe of the A6600.
Yeah, it's going to be too chunky and too wide. And I mean, just look at like your case size comparison, right?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous how much they've miniaturized it.
Yeah, and I think I love this. I mean, I really love the fact that it's so compact. And of course, in the process of miniaturizing, I've been really impressed by the fact that they have been able to maximize battery life at the same time. And so basically, before the kind of the limiting principle was actually the transmitters, I believe, to whereas the transmitters would give you about, I think, 6 hours on the Lark 150. Or no, the other way around. The receiver would give you 6 hours, but the transmitter would only give you 4 hours. Now everything is giving you 8 hours. And so for practical usage, you've doubled the amount of time you can actually use it. And then, of course, you continue to have this charge case that gives you a little over 2 full recharges of everything before the charge case itself needs to be charged. So you're talking about a potential of 20 plus hours of audio gathering before you need to charge anything, which is cool. And then the other thing I noted is that is an improvement from the actual 150 transmitters, is that they had to be charged in here, but now there's a USB-C port on everything in this new setup, so you can actually charge them independently. I don't necessarily know why you would want to, because this works so nicely. And part of just making it so plug and play is it very much like a good set of headphones. I mean, some of you are using AirPods, for example. You know, you pop those AirPods out. By the time you get them in your ear, they're synced up, you're ready to go. That's very, very slick, you know, and you don't have to worry about turning them off. It's just popping them back in there. That's the exact same way that these work, which is great. And so by the time you go to use it, it's truly plug and play, and it works. And so I think that's been great. So one thing that you noted is that on the actual the receiver, I should say, there was a digital readout on the one for the 150. There's not one on the new M1. So talk to me about how that's played out for you in real world use. Right.
So at first, I was quite concerned because I thought that was something that I was really going to miss and something that would kind of detract from this new model. In actual usage of the product, it turns out it hasn't really mattered at all. I mean, you have your metering on your viewfinder anyway, so you still know what your levels are. I liked the quick visual, and I still do like the quick visual that the 150 provides, but it really actually hasn't mattered at the end of the day. Yeah. And they do have this thing that they call, I believe, smart volume control. And so far it seems to work. I mean, it's even more plug and play, because you're not on this other set. You did need to set a proper level, and I actually found that my audio quality initially with the 150, I thought this is only okay, because I was getting more clipping. But what I found is that I needed to find the right balance between my record level on the camera, the input level on this. Now, most of those steps seem to be eliminated. And so what you've basically got is just 3 different positions, a high, medium, and low on the actual receiver, but it comes at default at the medium level, and it seems to work. Like, I haven't had to really play with it at all. And so, I do think that they've really made progress in that. Now, you actually did our range test on this. And when I did my initial review of the 150, I actually did it with I had the transmitter in my belt kind of behind my body, and I had a lav coming around the front. And I started off, I believe, at a distance of about 40 to 50 meters away. And I definitely had cut out until I got to within maybe 25 meters, 75 feet or so of the camera. And I think actually it was probably even closer than that before I actually got really pure audio. So talk to me about how they said that the range has been extended here. Talk to me about how you found that to be true or not true. Yeah, so they absolutely have extended it, as we found out during our SolidCom review. The distance that they can put into these piece of technology is really impressive as far as covering distance. So took it out, I walked out to about 60 meters and the audio was clear. All right, this is test number 1 to see if the range still works. Does the mic still work? How does the audio quality sound compared to if I was closer up? I won't know that until I take a look at it in post, but this is potentially working at this type of range. Let's walk a little bit farther. Of course, they're saying, you know, up to 200 meters line of sight.
Line of sight.
So that is going to be key a little bit later. 60 meters, no problem, no quality loss or anything. It was a very sharp and clear connection. Going onwards from 60 meters, whenever you get to about that 65, 70 range, if you are facing away from the camera and your body is in between the actual transmitter and receiver, then about 65, 70 meters on, you're gonna get that audio start to drop and you'll hear it kind of cutting out. Yeah. Now, I turned back around at about the 100 meter mark, and again, it was just as crisp and clear and smooth as it was at the 60 meter mark. Yeah. All right, I don't even know if I'm actually in the camera's view at this point. Does the range still work? I am wearing it just at the top, right in my shirt kind of button, right in the middle of the collar there. And does the range still work? I'm gonna come back to the camera and find out. And then likewise, I walked all the way back from 100 to 60 and all the way to the camera, and it never dropped because it did have that line of sight. Yeah. So when you're farther away, make sure you have the line of sight, but 60 meters in, it doesn't really seem to matter whether you're facing the camera or not.
And that's really a big deal because obviously, like for most of the kind of videos that you and I do, it's not a big deal to have that line of sight if you're sitting in a static position. But if you're wanting to move around, you're filming somebody that's maybe walking, whatever, to not have to really be thinking about that line of sight, or the fact that you might just want to hide the receiver more. I think that's really a huge deal. And so they're saying now you can get 200 meters, 656 feet if it's a line of sight, and then about 130 feet even with obstacles. And I would say that at your 60 meter test, you were actually outside of that 130 foot range, 130 feet being 40 meters-ish. And so you were already exceeding that, and yet you had uninterrupted audio. Yes. So, and it's I think it's important to note, because this is really what stands out to me, that even when you're at that 100 meter mark, so over 300 feet, it's not like the audio was still reasonably good, but noticeably different than when you were close to it. It was just the same as when you were, very, very close to the camera. So I think that that's really a huge step forward as far as that technology. And so this is kind of what I think stands out to me about the new M1, is that it just, everything kind of works as it should. And so let's talk about a few. We've been really, really positive at this point, and so this is not an infomercial. No. There are a few things that I am a little critical of, and so let's talk about that for a moment. One of those things that is kind of a big deal to me is that, as it stands right now, the receiver and the transmitters, very slick, very small, but you still have to have a cable to connect the receiver to your audio source. And so it does come with a couple of different cables. Let's see if I can get it out of here. And so one of them is on the camera at the moment as we're recording with it. And so you have these, little cables that are, 3.5 millimeters at each side. So one goes out of the receiver, one goes into the camera, or you have this one where you can record also to a phone. And so, or a computer utilizing the correct cable. But bottom line is, you do have to have a cable. So you've got this really sleek case. You could drop in a pocket, no problem. But you still need to have a cable, and you have to put that cable somewhere. And so I would really love to see them utilize the design of this case to where there's some way to attach or to store the cable as a part of it, because it's not really, you look at that and say, well, that looks complete by itself, but it's not really. You have to have some way of getting the audio from the receiver to the camera or to the phone, whatever you're utilizing. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, all of it does go into, they have this little nylon zip-up case. So, I mean, that footprint is obviously much smaller than what you had before, whereas you had this much more chunky case, and they gave you this bag. And so, I mean, we're heading in the right direction. Yes. But it's still something that I would like to see. And as I noted in a conversation we had off camera, I talked about how the new, they call it multi-digital interface or something like that. Basically the hot shoe on a lot of the newest cameras, you can record digital audio through it, but so far it seems it's only proprietary. So only first party, either Sony or Canon, whatever the case may be, their own microphones work. next level to me would be that Hollyland, maybe it's a licensing thing and it's not possible.
Yeah.
But if they could utilize getting that digital audio right there on that hot shoe, I mean, that would be very sweet. I mean, talk about eliminating one more potential problem because, you know, it's 2 connection points at the receiver itself and then into your camera or phone or whatever. So that's one other place where audio can fail in that capture process. And if you could eliminate that to where it's truly just pulling 2 things out of the charge case, putting one on the camera, that would be awesome. And so anyway, Hollyland, if you're listening, that's the next level right there.
Yes.
And so, and we've already kind of talked about the potential downside of not having a lav microphone. I think I would say that I still would have liked to have that as an option, even if they're not packaging it with lav mics, you know, just to have that port on there to where that's still an option. I think I would have preferred that. I mean, always to have more options rather than less is a good thing. And so far, I think that this is working for me, but I still like, in certain situations, I like having the lav option. We've talked about the digital readout, you know, that there's pros and cons, but it seems like it works okay without it. One other thing that you noted when it comes to a feature that is here, which is active noise cancellation. And so if you're in a noisy environment, now I will note that they do include, in the case, they've got like the dead cat things you can wear on that. But if you're actually wearing this, that really takes a lot away from the sleekness if you've got this big kind of puffy thing that's going to be pretty obvious on camera. And so they've got an active noise cancellation that kind of, you can have an option to eliminate environmental sounds. So, but you found there can be some issues with that.
Yeah, so basically my tip would be if there's no active noise to cancel and you're not in necessarily a noisy environment, for example, we're in an enclosed room right now and other than just kind of the AC going on, there's no other sound. So if you are in a situation where you don't need to actively noise cancel, don't do it. Because what will essentially happen is that the active noise cancellation or filtering, whatever they want to call it, is aggressive enough where it will actually lower the volume of your voice and sometimes even clip out potentially a little bit of range within your voice. So if you don't need it, don't use it. But it isn't a nice option there if you're kind of dealing with wind. And on that note, they actually made the dead cats easier to clip onto the mic. So that is good, although they're a little hefty.
Yes. And considering how small the mic area is of the actual transmitters, it seems to me that this could be miniaturized a bit further to where it's just something that's a little more discreet for covering that. But, I mean, as you can tell at this point, we really are kind of nitpicking, and even some of these things that I'm critical of, the system works fine even with those things eliminated. And so I think for me, bottom line is that I kind of judge things by how well they work. And so the 150 has held up perfectly well for both of us in very heavy use. I use it constantly for my channel. We use them in the church setting for collecting audio. And so far, no issues. And so, I mean, that's a big deal to me. And the M1 system seems to be just a step further in just the truly plug and play, you know, no having to sync up channels, no having to do scanning. All of that stuff is done kind of behind the scenes and it works. It's not like it's doing a lousy job and you saying, I wish I had manual control over all this so I could get better results. It works. And so at a price point like this, it's better than other such systems that I've tested. And I think that Hollyland is taking steps in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've taken measurable steps to improve it in every way, and they've given it to you in a smaller package and for a lower price. So as long as you aren't drooling over lav mics, you're all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So as always, if you look in the description down below, there is linkage to where you can go and purchase one of these for yourself, linkage to follow myself or Craig on social media. Be sure if you're watching on Dustin Abbott channel to go check out Let the Light In TV. And of course, if you're watching on Let the Light In TV, come check out Dustin Abbott channel as well. And as always, thanks for watching today. Have a great day.
And remember to let the light in.